Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock, let's go over the market, let's talk about what is happening to Tesla and the market. And yeah, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. Not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. And of course, again, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts, and charts updates, again, I do have that YouTube membership, right? Private membership section on YouTube. We'd love to have you there, guys. Check it out if you're interested. Again, I post all my updates there constantly as the market's open. The link to join if you're interested is down below in the description of the video. Click that, and you get access to the three options, right? Tier 1, $3 USD a month, all my Tesla updates and broader market updates. 5 includes NVDA, 7 USD a month includes everything else, including Discord access. We have a private chat room for tier 3 members. I do chart requests every single Sunday. And of course, you get all my updates on non-Tesla, non-NVIDIA stocks across the broader market. So definitely check it out. Again, if you're interested, we'd love to have you there, guys. But yeah, jumping into a Tesla, closing the day with a humble, we'll say 0.66% on the day, closing at 433 and change. A bit of an iffy day, right? Some good news and some bad news for sure. Had a nice strong open to the day in the morning and then kind of gave back most of that and kind of closed more or less roughly where it actually opened, right? So, what does this mean for Tesla stock, right? Now, obviously this week, at least the second half of this week can be a pretty big week for Tesla. We have delivery numbers on, I believe, Thursday, pre-market usually it is, usually around 9-ish a.m., give or take. So it's like a mini earnings on Tesla stock, right? So, how that goes is anyone's guess, obviously. But what we can do for now is get an idea as to what we can expect, at least going into the delivery print based on what the chart is currently telling us. So let's talk about that, right? What is the chart telling us? Well, first and foremost, we did close unfortunately below 444, right? 444, 445, right? You can see this area, right? These these wicks up here, right? We're constantly getting rejected and we did close below that. So, not ideal, right? Especially considering we went above it and we couldn't hold above it. So it's not the worst thing in the world, mainly because we're still ridiculously close to it. But if we close at the lows of the day, for instance, that would have been very concerning. At that point, I would have been pretty convinced that we, at the very least, come back down to, about high 420s, 430, right? The 9 EMA on the daily. And that's going to be the level to go for. But we close kind of in the middle. So there's good news and there's bad news. The daily candle is not going to tell us too much. It is still technically potentially a sweep. But again, because we close kind of right in the middle of the candle, it's kind of a doji candle and right just like less than $1 away from, what I view as a pretty important level. Again, 444 roughly, 445. It's a little indecisive. It's definitely a little bit indecisive. So whenever things are indecisive, I'll go to the shorter time frame. So let's go back to the shorter time frame first, and then I'll go back to the daily and kind of illustrate further what I'm talking about. So what is the 15 minute? I'm not going to go to the 1 hour. I'm actually going to go to the 15 minute, right? Even the 1 hour is actually not bad. You can see the 1 hour is bouncing off the 9 EMA pretty nicely. But going off the 15 here, just to give a better zoomed in view, you can see nice push up in the morning, or we broke past these important levels, and you can see the bulls were trying to hold on to this sort of 444, 445-ish zone, right? All these very large wicks, and then we finally closed below, and then you can see we started turning it back into a resistance, and then we obviously started to slowly waterfall downwards, got that gap fill. But the good news is the fact that we're actually holding above the gap fill, essentially 440. This is the level I was telling my members about all morning pretty much. 440 is really important to hold, right? This is a crucial level because obviously it was not only a level of resistance here, but it's also the gap fill, right? So you can see the wicks coming in at the bottom, showing that the buyers are stepping in at a crucial level of support, which is good. So now, because we're still stuck between these two major levels, 440 and again, 444, 445, probably tomorrow will be very, very important to determine where we go next. So simply put, and the way I personally look at it right now is if Tesla can break back above pretty much 444 to 445, honestly, even 444 is going to, but 445 if you want to be a little more safe, and essentially turn that area back into support, right? Turn this area back into support, then I think we go higher. And then I actually do think into the delivery print, we actually rally up closer to this gap fill around 455 roughly, which is if I zoom out all the way here and go to the left, it will take a while. Let me go to the daily chart and show you. Is this gap fill right here, right? Is this gap fill right over here that we have yet to fill? We've never filled this gap just yet. We got pretty close to it today, but we never actually filled that, right? So getting a cleaner gap fill on that would be my main level to watch for, with the best case scenario being slightly above, closer to 460 itself, which is kind of that pivot point. So that's kind of that, 455 to 460 level will be my target to the upside. So about $10 off of the break. Again, like I said, if we break above, again, about 444, 445, about $10 higher, that's kind of my target right now. Short term, again, this is short term, right? It's pretty much into the delivery print because, obviously once the delivery numbers come out, How good are they? How bad are they? How does the market react? How does it not react, right? We don't really know. Again, it's like a mini earnings, right? It's anyone's guess at the end of the day. So let's continue watching that. But if we do rally into the delivery print, there is a likelihood, a pretty increasingly, I would argue, likelihood that it is a sell the news event. However, on the flip side, let's say we lose 440 first, right? Let's say tomorrow, for instance, we lose 440. Market tanks or Tesla tanks for whatever reason by itself, and we actually go back down. Right? Then I do believe that will come down to, on the daily time frame, closer to the 9 EMA, which you can see is currently sitting at about 427. It'll go up a little bit more tomorrow, so it'll be closer to 430. But on top of the 439 EMA-ish range, obviously it's a range of support from before, right? Remember 430, I've mentioned that many times. But we also have this sort of rising trend line right here that will also act as a support. So if we sell off, again, I would expect similar to what I just mentioned to the upside, but to the downside, also about a $10 move. Because again, lose 440 minus 10, about 430. So I expect about a $10 move up or down once one of these levels snaps, essentially on like the shorter time frame, like the 15 or so minute time frame. But again, these are short-term moves. I want to make that very, very clear. Up or down, these are both very, very short-term moves. These are essentially going into the delivery print. I'm not going to try to predict how the market is going to go into the delivery print, but my guess would be if we rally into it, we most likely sell off. If we sell off into it, we most likely rally. And then from there, obviously, it could just be another sell-off. Who knows, right? But I would expect a buy the news kind of event or a sell the news event up here. So again, let's just see how it goes, guys. Let's see how it goes. Let's see how we go into the delivery print going into Thursday. So that's kind of my current main, I would argue, analysis. The weekly. Now, the weekly is where things are very interesting. Now, obviously, last week we closed with some decent strength, which is good, but, we still pretty much closed right into those green Fibonacci's, right? We've been kind of having, small issues, if you will, around these green Fibonacci's without getting a confident close above them. We got pretty close last week, but it wasn't necessarily above it. It was kind of right in it. So now, obviously, we're starting the week off above it, which is good. But like I said, and as we saw many times with last week's candle, it was kind of going up and down pretty substantially. You don't really know until the week actually closes, right? Because we want to see weekly candle closures in this case. So it'll be a pretty important week towards the end of the week, Thursday and Friday, to see not only how Tesla closes the week, but especially how the market reacts and how the stock reacts, if you will, to the delivery numbers, because that will also dictate how this weekly candle closes. For instance, if we get a nice rally and then with the weekly candle, so let's say we rally into delivery numbers and then the delivery numbers come out, it's a sell the news event and we end up closing towards the lower end of the weekly, let's say back down under 420 or something like that, right? That would be a major, major concern because then this weekly will look pretty bad, right? It'll be a pretty hideous weekly candle. And that's not something that you want to see from a bullish perspective, which will then even further validate to me that we are most likely entering some trappy territory up here because, again, I still want to reemphasize the fact that unless we end up doing a pretty substantial squeeze, which it is a possibility, it's just not it's not something that usually happens. It's like more like a 10 to 15 type, percentile of the overall price action that a stock experiences. Because, you do get these kind of moves where it just violently spikes up like this, violently drops down like this. But for the most part, it's not to that extreme, right? It's like a violent move up a little bit and then we kind of cool off, and then a violent move up a little bit and then we cool off, or a violent move down and then we cool off, violent move down and then we cool off, right? It's usually a little more like that as opposed to these extreme ones that we saw pretty much early this year and late last year. Make that very clear. So technically you can make an argument that this is similar to the left there and we just violently move up higher despite us being still pretty extended on the weekly relative to the 9 EMA on the weekly, of course. But like I said, more often than not, that's not the case, which is why I'm still a little more hesitant when I look at the weekly, despite the weekly still looking promising, right? Still promising signals. Speaking of promising signals, where is my trend line? I had a trend line here. I don't know where I went. Let me redraw it here quickly. Right. Speaking of promising signals, we obviously have this large trend line that is very, very important to watch for, right? If Tesla breaks below this weekly trend line, which again, if it were to happen, in my opinion, it would take a while for it to happen, but this would be something else to watch for. If we ever lose this trend line right here, that would be, in my opinion, at least very, very bearish. So let's continue monitoring that for now and see how that goes as well. Let me go ahead and actually take this visual current interval and below, and this one visual current interval and below. Perfect. Right, so again, the weekly candle will be important, especially with delivery numbers coming out, to see how it reacts and to see if this ends up being a massive bull trap or not. And do we finally come back closer to the 9 EMA on the weekly time frame, where I personally believe that's where like the true nice risk reward type scenario really starts to play out on the larger time frame, right? Because up here, on the shorter time frames, there's always a play to make. Even the daily time frame is arguably something to play around here for sure, right? But the weekly is suggesting, hey, we're pretty extended, guys. Kind of like when we were very extended here. You can see how far we were from the 9 EMA on the weekly. Yeah, you can still go up. I mean, for instance, even here, you can see we were very far away, but this weekly candle that after that, the one that set all-time highs, essentially closer to 500. Yeah, we still went a lot higher, but obviously then we sold off very aggressively and then came right back to it almost instantly. So, it's not like there's no short-term movements to play to the upside in this case, right? It's not like it has to go off to the downside literally right now, or, absolutely. Right? There's still short-term games to play, which is where we look at the daily or even like the 1 hour or even the 15, right? For those more zoomed-in shorter-term games. But I'm just kind of saying the overall larger picture is, yeah, it's up here, it's games, but make sure you're being a little more liquidy with, if you will, with your sizing, with your in and outs. You wouldn't want to overstay your welcome up here until it provides at least a better risk reward, in my opinion. Again, this is just my opinion. So let's continue monitoring that, guys, as we see fit. And let's see how the stock continues to behave moving into the rest of the week, and especially Thursday. The broader market, right? How's the broader market looking? SPY, take a look at SPY very quickly here. Well, yeah, SPY on the daily time frame looking pretty decent, right? What is it doing? Well, we ended up returning and taking these sort of 660 range back into a support today, which is good. We're still above the 9 EMA, which is good. We're still above this major trend line, which is good. And we have yet to make a lower low on SPY. Overall, SPY doesn't look too bad still, right? There's nothing out, crazy bearish. Now, like I said, the major signs to watch out for on SPY, if we start getting concerning, signals, losing the 9 EMA is number one, obviously, but, especially losing the 21 EMA, that's like a major, in my opinion, at least warning sign. But that also will most likely mean that not only do we lose this very large rising trend line that has been essentially supporting this very aggressive rally for quite a while now, but then we also potentially start risking losing and printing a lower low. So if we start seeing those kind of, warning signs kind of trickle in and, layer on themselves and get, more progressively, worse, I guess you can say, more and more warning signs, that's when the market can start having problems. That's when we can start maybe looking into a correction in the market, right? But again, as it stands right now, we're above the 9 EMA, we're above the 21 EMA, we're even above previous resistance, now back to support, about 660. We're above the trend line. Like, the market still looks overall bullish, right? And this is why I always say, can it top around here? Absolutely, but there's nothing suggesting that just yet, right? There's nothing signaling that it wants to top here, right now, when pretty much every major metric, other than the MACD, is still bullish, right? It's still bullish. As annoying as it might seem, because I think everyone right now is expecting the market to correct. Everyone's like, there's no way it can go higher. Yeah, it just keeps going higher. It is what it is. It is what it is, right? I do think at some point we will correct. At some point we'll lose these levels. At some point we'll lose this trend line. At some point we'll make a 5, maybe 10% correction. Of course, it's going to happen. Of course, it's not an if. It's just a when, right? But nothing's suggesting that yet. Maybe it will soon, but nothing yet. And if we start seeing signs, then that's a whole different story. But we're just not really seeing those signs yet, right? Market still looks pretty strong to me. So let's continue monitoring that and seeing how that goes, guys. But thanks so much for watching. And options flow, I forgot very quickly. Options flow. Some puts kept coming in towards the end of the day mixed with calls over here. Very bullish flow actually in the morning on Tesla. Very, very bullish flow. Many, many millions of calls being bought for Tesla, including 500 strikes for November and December of this year. So that's very, very bullish. Let's see how how this actually plays out, obviously. But towards the end of the day, a bit more mixed, right? Definitely nowhere near as bullish. Some bears definitely starting to step in, but most of these are short term this week, maybe next week. So they're more shorter term plays. But people look like they're starting to make their bets up or down. But in my opinion, the best thing on Tesla to do right now is wait for this kind of 15-minute congestion, if you will, to resolve up or down. And that should give us a nice idea as to what the stock wants to do next. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. And I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.